Hello, my name is Sam, my pronouns are they, them, and welcome back to my office. I have been super on and off on here for the past few months for a small mental health scenario. It's fine, everything's fine. We're gonna get back on track with the end of the year. With that, we're gonna start out with the most classic of choosing my top 10 for the year. I simultaneously thought that this was going to be a lot harder and a lot easier than it actually was. I thought it was going to be easier than it was because for the past few months I've been reading things that I kind of hate just for like ease of convenience and being lazy and not like going ahead and sourcing like audio content for my regular work days. If you don't know, I listen to audiobooks for 8 hours a day, about 5 days a week at my full-time regular person job. I listen to a lot of audiobooks and it's really hard when I go into work and I realize, oh crap, I don't have anything. I haven't picked anything out, and then I pick out something horrible that I don't actually want to read, but I need something to listen to, and that's how I get stuck reading Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon, which this was not. The Ice Planet Barbarians is not her best series. I have a book on my shelf by Ruby Dixon that's way better that has to do with an older female main character and a lot of worship surrounding her. That one was much better. But, you know, whatever. But that's how I get into these situations. And then I was going through and I was listing out all of my 5 and 4.5 star reads from this year out of 100 and I think almost 40 books. And let me tell you, there were more than I thought there were going to be. And I thought that they were going to be a lot harder to pick out than they actually were, but it turned out to be okay. I have a pretty solid top 10 this year. I am including 2 honorable mentions that I think are worth the conversation, and they were pretty close to making it on, but I feel comfortable like leaving them off. Hi, Editing Sam here for a super quick shaky interruption. I forgot to mention that I am participating in the St. Martin's press boycott, so that's not something that I'm really willing to take comment on right now, but I did my research to the best of my abilities to make sure that none of the books mentioned in this video are from St. Martin's Press or any of their imprints. I really hope that I didn't miss any of their imprints. I have been struggling with this boycott, not like actually struggling with it, but more of I feel like I have only found 2 books on my entire bookshelf that are from St. Martin's Press, and that just feels kind of wrong to me. So if I've missed anything, please let me know so I can do my best to rectify that. Ultimately, St. Martin's Press has chosen to like support some racist statements by not saying anything. So I just want to make it clear that this channel is a safe space and I am participating in the boycott. So message over. So with that, let's kind of get started. We are going to be working our way up to number 1, and I do have these in actually a pretty specific order that I feel fairly comfortable with. I will tell you, I do not own most of these books. I will like pick something up from the library, read it from the library, and if I decide I really like it, eventually I'll go and buy it. So most of these books I got from the library. First, I think every single one of these I actually got from the library first read around. So I've only picked out a couple since then, but let's get started. My first honorable mention is How to Be Eaten by Maria Adelmann. So this is not my normal genre. It's kind of like speculative fiction, kind of like a satire take on fairy tales for the most part. So basically what this is about is it's a group of, I believe, 6 women show up for group therapy, and they've all been through like really traumatic, horrible events, and they all were recruited for this group therapy based on their very public, horrible events. The most prominent woman that I remember was the woman from Bluebeard, because she was in this huge scandal where it came out that her boyfriend murdered all of his girlfriends and he turned them into human-made furniture. So that's like just a very visceral point in my mind. I really enjoyed this. I think I gave it a 4.5 star. I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was really well done, and it gave off the same kind of energy as like a lot of Carmen Maria Machado's stories. Like, it made me think about her story regarding, I'm not remembering Carmen Maria Machado's like the exact title, but it's a short story about women's spirits like being bound to dresses. And it kind of gives off that same energy, and I really just enjoyed it. I was really drawn to it, and I wasn't very sure about how I was going to like it. But I think that if you are into Carmen Maria Machado and like that kind of sphere of writing, I think that this is a really good option. It was interesting, it was really messed up, and altogether it just said a lot about the commentary of like popular culture and like the true crime world as a whole and reality TV. It was really fantastic. My second and final honorable mention is The Heartbreak Bakery by A.R. Capetta. So I gave this a 4.5 stars, and I feel like I am putting this in an honorable mention and not in my top 10 because it's really not my like age range, and I know that adults read young adult, and I am an adult that reads young adult, but I find it hard to give a lot of YA like very appropriate, like what I think YA should be and what YA should be categorized. I have a hard time like giving that like the full 5 stars a lot of the time because there is always just something about it where I'm like, there was a logical choice that you could have made. We could have gotten there so much easier, but this is a YA, this is following young teenagers, and they don't make logical choices, and I didn't make logical choices as a teenager. So it's like a frustrating element that I think is very appropriate for YA, but kind of hinders the story for me just the absolute tiniest bit. So The Heartbreak Bakery by A.R. Capetta is about a young person who is struggling with their gender identity and their existence as a whole, and they really put their heart and soul into their baking. There is one day that they are feeling particularly heartbroken about a scenario. I don't remember exactly what it is right now, but they put that feeling into the baked goods that then get sold at the bakery that they're working at. It ends up becoming a story of these 2 trans teenagers who are just running around this city in Texas desperately trying to fix what this baked good did wrong and the emotions that it spread around the city because it ruined relationships. And I think a lot of the value with this book comes with how complicated relationships are and how complicated the world is. It's never as easy as just putting something like back together just as it was. It's just not that way. And it was just the most beautiful story. I loved every second of it. I thought that the trans representation was fantastic. I thought the concept of questioning your gender was beautifully done. I think that the way that community is represented in this story is absolutely stunning, and I think that the complexities of human relationships, both romantic, platonic, and familial, are just out of this world amazing. I do not hear people talk about this book enough, but if you are looking for something to read, read The Heartbreak Bakery by A.R. Capetta. It is worth it in every capacity, and it does come with recipes that you can make. And I did make them. I made the agender cupcakes, and they were amazing. And it's so wonderful for me to be able to sit here and see my gender identity represented in such a beautiful YA. I am agender. I tend to just go by queer or non-binary because it's easier, but it was really wonderful, like, just getting to see that representation right there in front of me, and I cherish it. I cherish this book, and I do have A.R. Capetta like on a list to watch out for so I can keep up to date with their stories. Now, let's go into the big top 10. At number 10, we have Love After the End, which is a two-spirit and indigiqueer like sci-fi anthology, and it was edited by Joshua Whitehead. There are so many authors in this, and I recently put out a video that really broke down all of the stories. I believe I put that video out, but I loved everything about this anthology. This is the only anthology in the history of every anthology I've ever read that I have given 5 stars. I loved every story in this book. Did I give every single story in this book 5 stars? No, but they were all very close. And this is not normal for me because I am not a sci-fi person. And this was a sci-fi anthology. And you know what? It was just fantastic. It was everything. It was all indigenous writers. It talked about like their communities and their tribal nations and all of the details, which was really nice to get into like the nitty-gritty of that, because it's never as simple as just like putting a generic label on it. It kind of does authors a disservice, and I really loved the representation and the respect that was shown to them, both in their stories and in their author bios. I loved their author bios at the end, and the stories themselves were just top tier. They were really quality. It's totally worth it. It's a fantastic anthology, and the stories are not too long, so it's definitely one of those anthologies that you could pick up and put down and just read like a story a day or a story every few days and be totally comfortable and confident and have a great time with. My number 9 is This Is How We Lose the Time War by Max Gladstone and Amal mohtar. So this is told from 2 different perspectives in a letter format, which I really enjoyed. This is a sci-fi. I don't know what it is with me in sci-fis this year, but I just read like a few really on-point ones. And this is about 2 rivals who are really like fighting against each other to try to secure the best timeline for their communities. And it kind of started as like a taunting, like back and forth, like war, like personal war between the 2 of them. And it really blossomed into like a beautiful love story. There were such severe repercussions, and it was just beautiful to read. Like, it was genuinely just a story filled with beauty. It was a really short one, but I think that it's absolutely worth it in every capacity, and I cannot wait to buy it so I can go through and annotate it and just like slowly watch the angst and the love unfold and watch how decisions are kind of made, like kind of one-sided decisions are made because you think that something is the best option when maybe the other person does not think it's the best option, but you have no easy forms of communication. So it was just fantastic. I loved every second of it. I absolutely recommend it as something short and sweet and loving to read. So my number 8 I think is my most ridiculous one on here for some reason. This book, I think I read it in January or February, and it has stuck with me since then, to the point where I did pre-order the sequel so I could get the print that the author was offering up when you submitted a pre-order. So let me grab it. And don't ask me why this book has stuck with me so hard this entire year, but it really has, and I'm just kind of obsessed with it and this author. It is I'm in Love with Mothman by Paige Lavoie. I have talked about this. I did a full review video for this. I, for some reason, cannot get this book out of my head. It is so stupid stuck in there, and it is not like the most groundbreaking book to ever walk the earth, but like, God, it has just drilled its way into my heart. It's just like, I live here now. You are stuck with me. And I am stuck with this. I cannot get it off my brain. I cannot. And I think it has to do with the fact that Paige Lavoie is kind of writing this series like based on aesthetics. Like, this one has it's like based off the cottagecore aesthetic, and the sequel, I'm Engaged to Mothman, is based off like the royal core aesthetic. This is about Heather. She is 22 years old, and she is an influencer living in Florida. She was also a child influencer because her mom had like a hardcore mommy blog. So one day she decides enough is enough. I'm burnt out. I can't be an influencer anymore. She sight unseen buys a cabin in the woods in, I believe, West Virginia, and she does dumb influencer things where she puts on like a cute dress and fancy boots and climbs into a tree to read a book aesthetically, even though she's on a no social media ban. And she doesn't think about how she's gonna get down. Because why would you ever think about that? Why? You are just thinking of your life in shots, in like aesthetics for social media, for Instagram. And she almost falls out of the tree and dies. And she's saved by Mothman. And that is where their romance begins. This book has its claws in me. It will not release me. I don't know why. But you know what? There are worse things in this world than being into super sweet, adorable Mothman romance. Because you know what? There's some other Mothman romance out there that's crazy. That's crazy that I would personally put on my worst of the year list. But I'm not putting on worst of the year list because it would out my reading a little bit too much. And I just need, you know, we need to have a barrier sometimes. Sometimes internet and I have to have a barrier. And this is where I'm putting my foot down. So, has nothing to do with me being a positive person overall. It's just me having boundaries. So my number 7 is That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming. Yes, I do have 2. Number 8 and number 7 are both self-pub. Oh. Number 8, number 7, and number 5 are all self-published books. So clearly this has been my year of just starting to dip my toes into self-publishing, which I love. So this is just a really cute romance. So it's basically about this human who ends up saving this demon who is like in a fog from a god who has put like a curse over all of demonkind or whatever. And this woman is a cinnamon farmer. So this demon's like going to attack her and she's like, bam, cinnamon. And he snaps out of it and they eventually like fall in love and they're just perfect and adorable together. And it's just a sweet romance. It's sweet. It's a little bit spicy. I love the dynamics between the 2 main characters. I love the found family aspects and I love the like light adventure content of it because she is like, no, I want to stay here. I want to stay at my house. I don't want to be an adventurer. Like, I just want to be here, eating cheese, hanging out, living my happy little human life. And the universe is like, actually, you thought that's not what's going to happen. And she has to deal with the consequences of that. And it's the whole concept that the people who don't want to be heroes are the ones who are the best heroes. And that is absolutely her. The first book in the series so far has been my favorite. It's cute, romance, fantasy. And I couldn't ask for anything more. So, number 6 has proved that there is definitely space in my heart for new authors, new like immediate auto-buy authors. And Tiffany D. Jackson, when she writes horror specifically, is a new auto-buy author for me. I have not read her more contemporary things yet, but her horror, I have learned, does things for my brain. Specifically, White Smoke by Tiffany D. Jackson. This one I picked out because I was reading for horror and I wanted to make sure that I had like diverse horror picks. I felt like I was lacking and I was like, no. This is not gonna work for me. I need like some diverse horror. My horror this year was a lot of Grady Hendrix, and like no shade to Grady Hendrix, but like I could do better. And you know what? Tiffany D. Jackson is better because White Smoke is based off The Haunting of Hill House, which is my all-time favorite horror show. It might be like my all-time favorite horror, cinematic, whatever you want to call it. I'm obsessed with it, and this was based off of it. And oh my god, it was so good, and it was so freaky, and it was so fucking scary. And there was a lot of bedbug trauma in it. So if you are someone who, like, the thought of bedbugs, like, makes you want to peel your skin off, like, don't read this. Because there is, like, some visceral bedbug horror and bedbug trauma. It's very visceral. And it just was fantastic. So it's about this girl, Marigold, she got into some trouble at school regarding, I believe, drugs. And like her white boyfriend got away with it, but she did not. She's a 16-year-old black girl. And she kind of like gets into this space of like losing everything. I believe she goes to a rehab center. I don't remember if the rehab center has to do with drugs or her trauma with the bed bugs, but her mother, her brother, her stepfather, and her stepsister all move across the country to stay in this house for like an artist grant thing, whatever, like an artist program thing going on, that was in a black neighborhood that was burned to the ground. So it's all about like capitalism and like white people taking things over and like the trauma of black communities from like the things that have been done to them. And it's just really freaky. It's so incredibly freaky and spooky, and it's not even, like, the bedbugs are spooky and freaky, but it's everything else, and then you just tie in the bedbug trauma, and I'm just like, oh my god, this might be like the scariest thing I've ever read. It was so good. Tiffany Jackson is like on there. I'm keeping my eye out for the horror that she puts out because her kind of horror is my kind of horror. And I love that. So, number 5. For some reason this year, not for some reason, you know what? You know, I can tell you exactly why. She put me on to this series this year. And it is the Bergman Brother series by Chloe Liese, which I believe just got picked up by a publisher, but it was originally self-published. I liked the whole series, but the last book, If Only You, by Chloe Liese, was my favorite. It was everything to me. It was perfect. If you are wondering what kind of romance is my perfect romance, it is If Only You by Chloe Liese. So we are following Ziggy, who is the youngest Bergman sister. She is autistic. She is a fantastic soccer player. And she is going to her brother's wedding, I believe it's Ren's wedding, where she has like a sensory meltdown and she goes into a closet and she takes off her underwear because it's causing like a horrible sensory experience, and she flings it. She doesn't realize that her brother's best friend is sitting right there, and she flings her underwear at him because he's sitting in the closet. And of course, his name is Sebastian. And of course he is a bad boy. Oh, he has the worst reputation as a hockey star. He is horrible. He has crashed his car into, I believe, an elementary school. He just has like the world's worst reputation. And they start fake dating. Because Ziggy wants people to take her more seriously, and Sebastian needs like a PR pickup. Like, oh, I'm with someone good. I'm with someone who like makes me look good after I've done this like horrible stunt and I've driven my car into a school. I believe it was a school. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so they end up fake dating and they end up kind of starting to fall for each other. But that's not it. No, he's just like, he is in the mindset of, no, I'm not good enough for you. I will never be good enough for you. I need to work on myself so hard to try and live up to you. And she's just like, what? And he's like on his knees and he's like, you are so wonderful. I am trash. I have to fix everything. And I'm just like, oh my god. I love you both so much. I love them so much. They are just everything to me. And I know that like the publisher who has picked up this series, they're republishing with different covers. If you are selling your If Only You copy, the original one, the neon orange one, with her on the front holding a soccer ball and him in the background with his little hockey stick. I almost said club. I will buy it. I will buy it. I want that one. I don't care about the rest of the series, but I want that one. Obsessed with this. This was my perfect romance. This was everything to me. I loved it. No notes. Not a note in sight. perfection. We've got our Ellie Belly. Now that that's over. So my number 4 of the year is The 4 Profound Weaves by R.B. Lemberg. So this was a pretty short book that I read for the trans rights readathon, and I read some fantastic things for that readathon, but this one was one of the best. This was about 2 trans elders, and it was all about weaving, like learning how to weave the elements, which I just thought was such an interesting concept. Can I tell you that much about this story? Not in specifics. I feel like what really stuck with me about this story was, first, following 2 trans elders. I loved that. I loved every aspect of that. We don't get to experience our trans elders enough in this world, and the beauty of the lives that they got to live. So it was absolutely amazing getting to follow 2 trans elders and to just like experience them and spend some time with them. But I think that the more impressive thing about this book was how intense and beautiful the world building and the magic system were for a book that I believe was under 200 pages. Like, it's not a long book. Incredibly approachable book, and I loved every second of it, but the world building and the magic system were so intricately done and just gorgeous in such a small timeline. It was really quite impressive, and it really just showed off like what an incredible writer R.B. Lemberg is, and I'm really interested in continuing and reading more of what they've got out. I believe this is from, I believe this is the first book in like their Birdverse series or something like that. I don't really remember, but it was just stunning. It was truly stunning in every capacity, and I think that it's one of those ones that everyone should read. I think that it was really worth it, but it was truly just well done. It was just like beautifully crafted, just a fantastic story. We are on to number 3, and that is something that was recommended to me by this wonderful human as a replacement for The House of the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, which, if you don't know, has a lot of problematic things regarding like disrespect to native cultures and like the use of native stories, and the author's just like comments and the way that he handled being called out for the harm that he has done upon the native community. So I am choosing not to support T.J. Klune as an author based on the response to the harm that he has done. I just think that his response was quite disrespectful and diminishing, so I have been looking for something to kind of replace that vibe, and an author who's just gonna give me like that same energy but like better. And I was recommended this story, and I ended up giving it 5 stars. I loved it. Obviously, it's in my top 3 for the entirety of 2023. And that is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna. This is such a beautiful story. So we have a witch named Micah, and she is used to like hiding her magic and just keeping her head down and doing her thing, but she ends up getting called to like teach 3 young witches at like a remote location because they're getting older and they can't control their magic and they need help. And she ends up taking the position, and they are 3 young girls who were orphaned. They were taken in by an older witch who is not really there anymore, but they're being raised by like the librarian and the groundsperson, and I forget what her actual title is, but I think she was the chef, and I think there was one other person there. But obviously they need help with the magic. They need to control what's going on, because young witches who can't control their magic are ultimately dangerous, and they need an adult there to kind of counteract some of the chaos that goes on. So this is a found family story. This is a story about young witches, like the trauma that they've gone through and their level of trust and how different 3 sisters can be. It's also a romance between her and the grumpy librarian Jamie, and that part of it was so cute. It was such a good romance. I wouldn't say that this is just a romance. I definitely wouldn't like diminish it like that, because it's definitely not. has a lot to do with found family and trauma and society as a whole. But you know what? We get to see queer elders. We get to see, like, young girls being raised in a non-nuclear family. We get to see everything that you could ever want and more. We get to see, like, bonding between Micah and the three girls, and we get to see a beautiful romance between the stereotypical grumpy sunshine. And you know what? Who doesn't love a good grumpy sunshine dynamic? I loved this story. I thought it was fantastic. There is another book coming out, I believe in January, in this society, and I am so excited to pick it up. I am so excited to continue talking about this book, and I am so excited to honestly do like a cute little cozy reread of it, and I'm hoping February. So if you are someone who really originally enjoyed TJ Klune, but you're kind of unwilling to just kind of push under the rug the harm that he has caused, Sangu Mandanna is a fantastic author. You should definitely look into her to give you those same comfy, cozy fantasy vibes. It will not disappoint, I promise. My number 2 for 2023 is one that has stuck with me for this entire year. I read this in either January or February, and I think about this book almost daily. And it is All the White Spaces by Wilkes. This is a trans-Victorian Arctic horror, and it is the scariest thing I've ever read. It is so scary. So we follow Jonathan, who is a trans man just after World War I, I believe, in England, and he escapes his home with a friend after his 2 brothers died in World War I, and he escapes to get onto this Arctic exploration ship. I think it's the Antarctic. Whatever. The logistics of it don't matter. What matters is that we are following a trans-Victorian man in a really fucked up situation. So he manages to get him and his friend onto the boat to help with this exploration. I believe that they smuggle Jonathan on to the boat. And then he's just kind of there until he gets found out. And then they're like, okay, I guess you can stay. I guess. And they start to get down there, and things are not going to plan. Off schedule, like, things go wrong. But they end up getting there. Mostly alive. And that was the worst decision that they could have ever made. Truly. They should not have lived, because it did not go well. It's so scary. It's very slow. And it's very melodic, is kind of what I'm gonna say to it. Like, you kind of feel like it could just kind of, like, there's a light orchestra going on in the background a lot of the time. And it's just very, very scary. And there's a lot of psychological horror that's going on with it. And it's just, oh my god. Oh my god. And all by the light of the, the light of the Aurora Borealis, I believe it is. Oh my god, it's just horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying, and the thought of being, like, caught in a white wasteland of just ice and nothing as creatures are slowly, like, coming in and, like, slowly picking you off one by one. Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! It is so scary. It is so well done. It was so interesting. It was so scary. And you know what? I'm a wimp. I'm a wimp. So I guess you could take this with a grain of salt, because I am an absolute wimp. Like, I could not do extreme horror if my life depended on it, but All the White Spaces by Wilkes was absolutely fantastic, and I think about it on a daily basis. And I can't wait to get my grubby little paws on a copy. I need a copy so I can reread it and be horrified. Absolutely horrified. I will be unwell. But it's fine, and I'm gonna accept that fate. My number 1 for this year, and I stand by this being my number 1. This is another book that I read during the Trans Rates Readathon, and it was fantastic. It is Light from Uncommon Stars by Ryka Aoki. This is about a young trans violinist, the Queen of Hell, who is a violin teacher, and a family of refugee aliens running a donut shop. All of this sounds crazy, and this is crazy. There are some very severe trigger warnings for this, so I would be very, very careful going into this if you cannot stomach anything like sexual violence or things along that nature. Really check the trigger warnings on this. Go on to Storygraph. They have trigger warnings there that people kind of customize, and you can see from there. I think that's a really important thing to do with this book. This story was so well done, but again, it was the writing of this. The writing of this story was just top tier, out of this world. It was so well done for such a wide range of stories and perspectives being told. Like, we are witnessing so many different people and things, and it's just insane to watch everything like seamlessly come together. It was absolutely beautiful. The narratology in this book was just phenomenal. I loved every second of it, and I am planning on doing like a breakdown and a walkthrough of it like I did for N.K. Jemison's The Fifth Season, because I think that this is just a beautiful writing. Like, this is no easy feat. The construction of this book is out of this world impressive. This writer is fantastic. Her editor must be just out of this world insane too, because this is so hard to accomplish, and so many people try to, and they don't do a really good job. This drew me in so intensely. Ultimately, the story itself, like the characters that we're following, of course, they're really interesting, they're really fantastic. I loved following Katrina. She was a trans teen girl who was in a family who was pretty violent against her. She was back and forth out of relationships, just trying to find places to stay that involved a lot of sexual violence and physical violence. She was homeless. She was just trying to figure anything out when Shizuka, the queen of hell, as we call her, found her and took her in. And it comes at this like idea of right and wrong and guilt and not guilt, because Shizuka made a deal with a demon or the devil or whoever you want to call it, and she had to keep sacrificing like the souls of amazing violinists. And she gets to the point where she comes to just love Katrina so much, and they become so strong together with such a strong bond, and you get the guilt of, do I sacrifice myself or do I sacrifice her? And then you bring in like a romance aspect with a refugee family trying to run from intergalactic war by running a donut shop. I mean, like, that just sounds crazy. That sounds crazy, and it sounds like it would diminish the story as a whole and take it like down a few notches, because it is such a serious and beautiful story, but then you get to witness it, and somehow it is just twisted into this like beautiful, intense, incredible thing. And I still don't know how she did it. I'm just in awe of the craft of this story, and I feel like that's what I'm kind of noticing as we work our way up the list a little bit more, where it becomes like craft is such an important part of the stories that I love the most. You see this with this, you see this with all the white spaces, you see this with the 4 profound weaves, you even see this with white smoke. Like, the way that a story is told is so profoundly important to my enjoyment of a story, and this is the most impressive out of all of them for me. I was absolutely obsessed with it. I'm still absolutely obsessed with it. I will continue to be absolutely obsessed with it, and I will keep my eye open for anything that Ryka Aoki publishes in the future. It was just fantastic. So that is where we are at. Those are my top 10 for 2023. I'm not going to say that 2023 was a fantastic reading year for me, but I think that I have learned a lot, and I think that I have done my best to hold strong, even though this has been an incredibly rough year. So, with that, let's hope for a better reading year of 2024. A year in general, I'll take anything at this point. So yeah, I hope that y'all are having a good end of the year. Let me know what your top 10 are, if you loved any of these. If you're very confused by the variety of books in my list, me too. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that this got a little out of the ordinary, a little bit weird. So I will see y'all later for some most anticipated of 2024. I hope everyone's having a fantastic night, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye.